blood pressure, we'll commence by clearing the filters here that lie close adjacent to the base of the neck. The triangular area outlined by the collarbone and the superior surface of this muscle and the base of the neck itself is what we're referring to. Triangular area there that we're going to create a breaking up movement, essentially carrying the surface tissue with our fingers, but not pressing and not presenting the tips of the fingers, but the flats of the fingers, so that we carry the surface tissue with, and even though it's performed gently, it penetrates. Feel that you're going to use the weight of the fingers only and not press. Can allow the fingers to roam around to completely explore the triangular area as we perform this breaking up. And after a minute or two of that, we'll commence to create vacuum down one side of the neck. That's from the base of the skull right down toward the triangular area, with the curved mid finger playing the prominent role, although we're applying 3 fingers in this contact. The work is a vacuum down over only, that is, drawing from the head on down toward the triangular area. It may appear as I speed it up, and I can when I'm familiar, that I'm rubbing up and down, but remember, it's downward only. Creating a vacuum. And after a while on one side, we go to the opposite. You'll notice I support the head gently with the offhand so that the person doesn't have to work the muscles to keep the head erect. The vacuum, you recall, means medium pressure, never heavy. Heavy could collapse what we're working upon and render our work null and void. Now, after creating individually, we'll go back to this circular movement of feeding what we've broken up and drawn down from above, feed it through the filters again. Same as that movement we commenced with. And following that, we'll go to loosening up the muscles over the back, roughly the outline of the trapezius muscle, that area. And this is essentially a motion where we close the hand, long line of the thumb and opposite to the fingers on the other side, without bringing tips of thumb and fingers into contact, as you see. And there is a slight circle from the palm itself, so that it amounts to just a swift little jiggling movement, we say, but very effective on breaking up hardened up tissue here. Then we'll go back to where we commenced, go over the same cycle again, breaking up, creating a vacuum, feeding it through the filters once more, and this movement we just did, making sure that it comes up and meets with the work that we did on the back of the neck, because we could have performed everything well, but if we left these muscles and even a gap here where we hadn't made it meet with the work, it could all tighten up again. That's what's been found. So we'll be thorough. And after about the 3rd or 4th cycle around, we can commence to create our vacuum. Both sides at the same time, that is simultaneously, the thumb on one side and the fingers on the other. Creating vacuum along with breaking up movement, circular movement here. When we contact both sides, it enables us to compare accurately one side with the other. And wherever we feel that there's contraction in the muscular tissue, things are still not uniformly soft, warm, and pliable, we'll pause and give a little more breaking up, and then we go back to the vacuum, or drawing down simultaneously now. And after this, we would again go, of course, to the feeding through the filter movement, and again loosening up the muscles under the shoulders, until we have spent about 20 minutes time, or until the head is relieved, as the text so well describes. High blood pressure. General treatment is comprised of 3 to 5 minutes of our work on the back of the neck and shoulders, as we did for high blood pressure. In other words, it's nothing other than a miniature high blood pressure treatment. Its length extending according to what we find in the body as we work. Sometimes it'll be brief and sometimes a little longer, till we get the desired result as it appears under our own hand. This does not mean that every person who comes into our hand is a prospective high blood pressure case, not at all. But this part of the body is such a fruitful area to work upon that Stephenson felt everyone should have a little miniature treatment on the back of the neck, no matter what they came for, if possible. So we will illustrate it briefly by saying we begin just as we did for high blood pressure. Circle to the filter area, the triangular area that lies close in against the base of the neck. The vacuum on each side, from the base of the skull down to that triangular area. And this breaking up movement, loosening up movement over the shoulders to come up and meet thoroughly with the work we did in the back of the neck. These are the same movements we used in high blood pressure. And our text so well describes different applications for treatment on the back of the neck and the value to be derived that we'll not elaborate further here. For sinus, hay fever, and catarrh, trouble in the frontal sinuses, we'll apply this gentle stroking with the 2 fingers of each hand from the bridge of the nose right up the median line, carrying it well up over the forehead toward the hairline. One pair follows the other. And a gentle stroking, and while we're performing it, we'll think about creating a vacuum or a suction. For a half minute or upwards of a minute, and then we'll go quickly to the little dents just superior to the eye that each of us have, these supraorbital notches, where I apply a firm pressure from the bony tip of the finger, and you'll notice as I applied it, I moved the fingers gently, slightly together and apart, and release immediately. That's in order to contact the point center of the notch. We apply it 3 times in all. We'll go to profile for this second one, where we can see how the 2 fingers commence at the bridge of the nose and stroke well up over the forehead. It's the same thing we did at first. Keeping it gentle always. Again, quickly to the dents and releasing immediately. And even for a 3rd time, applying the same thing, perhaps a little more vigorously each time, but never allow it to get rough as heavy, as we have said. Now, if there should be any fever in the brow or heat, we can intersperse between each of those applications some of this stroking with the palms of the hands to remove the heat. The fingers glide smoothly afterward. Till we feel it comes to normal temperature to our sense of touch. There's just one contraindication. If we should ever, when we gaze intently at the brow, discover that there is a blue band or line lying just superior to the eyebrows, or just beneath that part of the forehead where I stroke, then we would be certain never to apply the pressure to the dents, for the bone might be thin there, and that pressure might do damage. We could do the forepart, but not the latter part of each application. Sinus, hay fever, and catarrh. Adenoids will carry the head against the chest, placing our hand just superior to the ear in order to steady the head. And then with the tip of the index finger, we'll touch about midway between bridge and end of nose, using the thumb against the index finger as a depth gauge. We're not going to reach very far inward toward the face. We keep it pretty well out, and very gently, gradually, we apply a pressure toward my body so that it gradually increases, and we'll then feel a little indentation. As soon as we have that, we'll release immediately and go to the opposite side. Doing the same. You have to feel accurately for that indentation to appear. And do not apply excessive pressure. Give it just a little time. As soon as it appears, release. For hearing in the antrums, we'll ask the person to breathe through the mouth. And we'll go carefully with the tip of the index finger to contact the base of the eye tooth, the inverted base of the eye tooth, and compressing the nostrils slightly as we press back toward our own body. Be gentle here. Do not use excessive pressure. The movement gathers and then presses. We repeat that for 5 or 6 times. And then we move on to where we use contact with the mid finger. Starting at the same point, we'll create a vacuum all the way back onto the ear itself. Being careful to dip down enough at first to clear the cheekbone, and then follow a long gradual ascent back up onto the ear itself. Completing each stroke, finish it out with a uniform vacuum all the way. 5 or 6 strokes here, and then we vacuum the ear itself. And here we want to be certain they're breathing through the mouth. We'll proceed gently at first in order to determine that they can remain comfortable. After assuring ourselves of that, we can proceed to full vacuum. For pain in the face, we will go to these notches inferior edge of the jawbone. And we're going to draw all vessels and nerves that belong into those notches into position, first by going about 3/4 of an inch forward of the notch and using this surface of the finger, the last digit. Draw them carefully back to the center of the notch. We can feel what we're working with here. Then we'll release and go back to the angle of the jaw and come very carefully forward. This time not dropping into the notch, but just to the back edge of the notch. And we can repeat that till we're certain that we have all things centered as perfectly as we can get them in the notch itself. It's well to do both sides at the same time. We have the comparison to guide us. Now, if the trouble does not come from these notches, then we must go to the center line of the chin itself, right at the very center. And especially if it's reported that one whole side of the head and face is in difficulty, then we go here. We're going to use this last digit again as the working member, and the thumb, once again, serves as a depth gauge. And going just about 1/8 of an inch on each side with a very firm, positive movement and slightly rolling movement, which we can repeat. We're going to make certain that we have that nerve drawn to exact center. Then it may be necessary, using oil, to lift the tissues of the face itself. We'll start with fingers aiming almost straight down, and very gradually and very gently bring the palm in contact without compressing the tissues of the face. We lift so gradually and gently that we do not draw the tissues out of position. Up at this position, we'll hold with the fingers of the other hand till we can get the palm once again at the starting position. We repeat this as needed. As long as we do not compress, this can allow the life to flow rapidly into the tissues of the face. And so on. In healing tonsils, when tonsils are in trouble, we'll try to arrange for a period to work 3 times at 2-day intervals. And it would be better to do this at the onstart, get it agreed that it'll be possible. Every other day for at least 3 times. With oil in our hands, we'll place them upon the hot spot, the palms on the hot spot. The fingers extend straight out ahead. Glide backward, around the angle of the jaw, up in front of the ear. Finish it out, clear up to that point. Pause a split second there. Then repeat. This done slowly, gently, soothingly, without pressing. We're working to bring this part of the body to normal temperature. Whether it takes 6 strokes or 26, we'll stop as soon as we feel the report from our own hands that it's at normal temperature. We can see here the way the fingers follow the palms up in front of the ear and clear up against the bone here. Pause the split second and then repeat. keeping this mid finger, its length, well in contact. And of course, as we said earlier, as soon as it's normal temperature, we stop. It's not so many strokes or so many minutes. That's to heal tonsils. For strep throat or quinsy, we will place palms upon the hot spot at mid-region of the throat and in here. We'll do it by bringing the palms from the forward direction gently toward my own body till they rest softly, as nearly as we can. Bring them in contact with the throat. And then we proceed by lifting straight upward. Fingers follow again, and they wind up the same point up against the bone. Pausing again for that split second and then repeating. When people have this difficulty in the body, we must not press. If we pressed even in the slightest degree, we could cause them to faint out and topple over. So we'll always work according to directions. Soothing, gentle, healing touch. Here we can see again how the palms, we bring them as nearly in contact as we can get them without pressing. And the mid finger follows up again in front of the ear, the same point as we earlier mentioned. And we want to schedule so that these people get attention at least once every day for 4 days. Strep throat can be dangerous, and we must make sure that we get the opportunity to get to them at least once a day for each of 4 days. We are working to bring the body once again to normal temperature, so that when our hands report normal temperature, we stop. In this case, we'll draw a little glass of faucet temperature water and ask them to try to swallow. If they could not swallow with impunity, we'll have them lie down, rest a while, and then we'll have them resume the position so that we can take the heat out again. We may have to repeat this several times, but we want to make certain that they can swallow from the tap temperature water before we leave them, particularly the first time. If we cannot gain this point, put them in the hands of someone who can take care of them. Stephenson mentioned the axiom to him: a germ cannot live in normal temperature. He says positively, if we will bring the throat to normal temperature, the dread thing cannot persist. So that's exactly what we're performing in this wonderful manner that he taught us. Strep throat. For laryngitis, we're seated beside the patient so that our hand and wrist are not under strain. We place the web between the thumb and fingers just beneath the voice box. And here we're going to stroke downward. Once again, the palm is removing the heat and the fingers follow after to create a vacuum. voice box is the line of demarcation, that is, in elevation in our body. If at any time we have to give attention to all three regions of the throat, upper, middle, and lower, we'll remember that for the upper and middle, we must stand behind the person and drain upward in front of the ear. But for laryngitis, where we find the heat resides heavily in this bony structure, we'll stroke downward so that the palm crosses that structure, at least down to where the breastbone begins to turn in under slightly. And we begin as high as we can without going above this line of demarcation. That's the length of stroke. Here we'll keep the palm in full contact for each stroke, and you'll notice how our thumb and finger flow together to create a vacuum immediately beneath the voice box. And so on until we bring it to normal temperature, even though it may take a little longer here because of the bony structure. Once it's at normal temperature, in almost every instance, they will have the voice restored. They'll be able to talk. Laryngitis. For night sweats, we would go to this location in the head using thumb and mid finger. And to find that, we can refer to a point midway between this horizontal plane on top of the head and a vertical one at the back of the head. We go just about midway between, with a spacing of about 3.5 to 4 inches between thumb and finger. I'm going to place the opposite hand over the forehead and elevate my arms so that I have the pressure to the head squarely between. And I give a firm pressure in and up and release immediately. I'll repeat it once more. Firm pressure inward and upward, but not moving out of the location, and release immediately. The second illustration was for clarity only. We should only need to perform that once at any given time. Night sweats. For the eyes, to feed the eyes, we go to this location, the back of the head, pretty well on a line with the corner of the eye, below the top of the ear, on around and back. That's one way we can find it. And again, we're going to use thumb and mid finger. We'll start with our motion. As we circle, we'll feel thumb and finger fall into a groove. I'm going to press forward toward the eyes, and I have my hand on the forehead to oppose that, so that as the fingers and thumb move forward, they will want to glide upward, and we allow them to do so. All we need to do is circle here and think about feeding toward the eyes. And as we do, our thumb and finger will center up so that they pass forward in the groove. And then as we release and return, we can definitely discern the groove. At first it might be obliterated, it might be filled up, but as we continue to circle, we can feel it appear. Then we might slow down to perform the positive feeding action. As the finger and thumb glide forward and upward, we'll complete it clear out to the forward and uppermost end of that groove. Make it thorough. Finish it out. This is what we do for failing eyesight. We may gather in this manner and then occasionally give a more firm pressure. The need for this is well described in the text. We never attempt to feed eyes that are bloodshot, sore, or inflamed. That is, if they, under the eyelids, they feel sore to our gentle touch. We should then first go a ½ inch beneath this groove that we've just described, drop down a ½ inch, and reverse the mind in the hand in order to create a vacuum and withdraw any inflammation from this region of the head. The eyes are up forward. They're the end organ that senses, gives the information, but it's back here that we actually see this part of the brain. Here's where all the information is interpreted. Now this, the withdrawing, is a gentle vacuum. We'll think withdrawing or suction. And because it's light and gentle, once we're familiar with it, we can speed it up. We'll let it run free and easy and more swift. This is almost 180 degrees opposite from what I feel and think in my head as I perform one compared to the other. I'm going to go back again to the first one, the feeding of the eyes. Very positive feeding pressure. Forward toward the eyes. Now I'll drop ½ inch beneath and return to this, the withdrawing. This is by way of comparison, so that we can feel the difference. We'd say there's not occasion arises to apply both of them at any one sitting. It would be one or the other, according to what we find in the body. Feeding and or withdrawing from the eyes. For migraine headache, we'll commence placing our hand on edge on the shoulder. Allow the thumb to rest just beneath the skull and immediately alongside the median line. On the right side, in this case, right side of center. And I can check whether I'm where the neck joins the head by tilting, rocking the head gently. I want the little pad forward end of my thumb to rest at that exact spot. Then by opening the space between the bones, tilting the head forward and away from my point of contact, I sustain the contact while I gently move the head around, circumduct it around, bring it up to center. Replacing the substance between the vertebrae at that point. Now, if we do not find the trouble on the right, we'll simply shift the thumb to the left of the median line and symmetrically perform the opposite. That is, I'm going to tilt the head forward and away from the point of contact and circumduct it around up to center. Replacing substance between the vertebrae on that side. And we follow the text here to perform according to what is needed and according to what we find as we contact the body. Migraine headache. For epilepsy, we'll place the thumb in position at the base of the neck, where the neck joins the shoulders, or where the line crease shows so often. Place the thumb right over the crease. In long line of contact from this last digit, palm flat now on the shoulder. and then move the head forward and away from point of contact to open the space between the vertebrae, and then carry it back around and up to center. Pretty firm pressure now from this last digit. Maybe you can see the white print from pressure of the thumb, which would be correct. Now if we need to work on the opposite side, we simply shift the same thumb over symmetrically to the same spot. But this time, remembering to move the head forward and away from point of contact and circumducting in the opposite direction. Back up to center. Replacing substance between the vertebrae on the right or left as needed. Epilepsy. Common headache. Its cause will lie in the location between that for migraine and that for epilepsy. In other words, this space between, where we can easily palpate to discover protrusion of substance from between the vertebrae, or in motion we'll discover that which is unyielding, it's stiff. But suppose we select this spot as one that we wish to replace substance between the vertebrae. And if we remember that our hand on edge position was this for migraine, and hand palm flat position was this for epilepsy, then we can realize this is about midway between. In other words, the hand position is automatically graduated, and that determines the exact contact for our thumb at this elevation on the neck. Again, we'd simply open the space between the vertebrae and carry the head smoothly, gently around up to center, replacing the substance between the vertebrae. And if we should require it on the opposite side, we would simply shift that same hand over and do the thing symmetrically on the opposite side. We can easily proceed from base of neck right up to the base of the skull, either alternating with these movements, or if we chose, we could proceed all the way up on one side and then all the way up on the other, according to the need, which experience can lead us easily to discover. Common headache. It means replace the substance anywhere that we find it in those spaces between the vertebrae which lie from the base of the skull on down to where the neck meets the shoulders. Common headache.